Is this your first time? Hi. If this is more than your first time, welcome back. I'm guessing you guys are here to find out how you can build some of these rail doors. This is for a build I'm doing called the Nook. If you haven't checked out that playlist, check it out. It is a 3 shipping container build, and we are just about done. Got these doors installed. I'm going to show you how to make these doors, what kind of hardware we used here, and how to install all of it. So, without wasting any more of your time, let's get started.
All right, so let's run through the material list real quick for these doors. These doors are going to be 50 inches wide by 96 inches tall. I'm using 1/2-inch birch plywood for the base of the door, and as you see, what I'm doing here is I'm actually taking some tongue and groove pine siding and ripping it down to a 3.5-inch trim casing on the front and, well, both sides of the door actually, because there's no front or back. It's a rail door. So I'm ripping these all down to size for my border casing. And once I have all those ripped down, I'm going to go ahead and rip the stock of my 4x8 sheet of birch plywood down to the 92 inches that it needs to be. I know I just said 96. It's actually 50 by 92 inches for both doors. Okay, once I have all of my pine ripped down for my casing, or more technically, my rails and stiles, rails being the horizontal pieces, stiles being the vertical pieces, I'm going to come out to my stock. Once it has been ripped down to my final dimension, I'm going to go ahead and lay my stock out for these rails and stiles, measure every piece. Again, I'm going to have on the pine, I'm going to have 2 rails and 2 stiles on each face of the door. So I'm going to lay everything out and get it cut ahead of time, so that way I can dry fit every single piece I need before I glue it and nail it. Some of the pine can be a little tricky to work with, especially this tongue and groove stuff, because it can come out a little wonky. It can come out bent, turned, curved, and all kinds of shapes. So you want to make sure you're getting the best pieces possible for whatever material you're going to use. If you're going to use this stuff, just keep in mind it can be a little finicky to work with. All right, once I have everything laid out, measured, and then cut, I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, dry fit every single piece, starting with my rails. That would be the top and bottom horizontal pieces, as you can see here. The reason being, I'm using 4x8 birch plywood. Okay, so it's 48 inches wide by 96 inches long. I need a 50-inch rail door. So, as you can see here, I'm using my combo square. I need my rails and this layout to come out with my banding to measure 50 inches wide, which means these are going to have to overhang my stock because it's only 48 inches wide. And since I don't own a lumber or a board stretcher, this is how I'm going to build these doors at 50 inches. Okay, all jokes aside, I'm going to band every side of this door. And what that means is I'm going to have a finished piece that's going to cover up my joints on the edges of these doors. So my measurement for my rails here is going to be 49 inches top and bottom. And that's why I'm using the combo squares, to make sure I have it 1/2-inch overhang on each side. And then my edge banding is going to be 1/2-inch on each side. So 1/2-inch plus 1/2-inch is 1 more inch on each end. That gives me, from a 48-inch piece of stock, a 50-inch wide door. If you haven't caught that, go back and rewind it. All right, once everything laid out, I've used my combo square to get my 1/2-inch overhang on each side of my rail. I'm going to go ahead and clamp those down with my bar clamps. Then I'm going to go ahead and come in with my stiles, make sure I've got those measurements correct, and dry fit everything one more time before I go ahead and glue it up and go ahead and use my pin nailer. Again, I'm using 18 gauge 1-inch nails to set these. And like I say in other videos, my brad nails are just going to be taking down the glue so it can dry up. The glue is actually what I'm using to bond and hold my stock in place. The brad nailer is just really kind of just to set it in there, more like a bar clamp, just holding it in place. A little bit of integrity, but the glue is really what sets everything up and glues it up. So go ahead and do my rails. I'm going to glue those up, nail them down, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to set my stiles in here, my vertical pieces. Triple checking one more time that my overhang is correct, and then once everything nailed down on the rails, I can come back in with the vertical pieces, set them in place, make sure one more time everything fits. If I got to shave something off, I will, and then go ahead and glue my vertical pieces up, and once again nail them down with 18-inch brad nails. And then that's the face. Once I have that face finished, I'm going to go ahead and flip this over and then repeat the process on the other side, as you can see here. Again, I'm always triple checking every single measure, and I want to make sure everything lines up. And once I have the first side down, I want to make sure that my other side of my rails is going to line up with the side that I've just installed. And if I have to cheat it or sand it, I will a little bit. Any tiny little imperfections in this, I'm going to come back with a trim router and just kind of shave off. I'd rather not sand it down, at least at first, until I use the trim router. As you guys are going to see later, I'll just kind of run that on the edge and get it nice and squared up. Again, working with some of the pine, it can be a little bit tricky, so I just want to make sure if there's any bend in some of the stock material, even if you can't see it until you install it, that trim router will clean it up for you. Really, really nice. The door has to be square, obviously. So when you put it on the hardware, it can open and close correctly. That's the trick with any sort of millwork you're going to be doing, trim, doors, window casing, whatever that is. You want to make sure that you are square. All right, so once I got those vertical pieces on the other side laid out, everything's lined up, I'm going to go ahead and measure for my banding. And I'm going to go ahead and use the same material. It's going to be the same sort of pine I've been using for my stiles and rails. And I'm going to rip that down to the width that it needs to be. This door is going to be 1.5 inch door. 1/2 inch material for the rails and stiles, and then I have 1/2 inch birch plywood. 1/2 inch plus 1/2 inch plus 1/2 inch is 1.5 inches, trust me. Okay, so my camera died, I think, during some of that install, but did you guys kind of get the gist of that? Yeah? No? If you're nodding your head, that's pretty funny. I can't hear you, and you can't hear me. This is just a video. I'm going to continue around the rest of the door, finishing this off, so you guys will get the gist. Don't worry. Okay, so as I said there, my battery did die, but what I'm doing is I'm actually using my bar clamps to set up my edge banding pieces because I'm working by myself and I don't have an extra set of hands, at least not at this point. They haven't grown in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those bar clamps to hold them in place, get everything nice and tight and flush, and I'm going to hold that until the glue sets up. It's important that if you have any sort of imperfections in the wood as it's working along, any gaps, you want to make sure that you use those bar clamps or something to hold it down and not just brad nails. I can actually compress that wood enough where I can get it to take the curve out. Once I do the vertical pieces, I come back with the horizontal pieces of the edge banding, glue and nail those up just like I did on the other end. And suddenly a door is forming, guys. Look at this. Everyone's amazed. The door is forming. Okay, now this is one of my favorite parts, although some people don't like doing this part. This is the part we have to go back, we have to go ahead and we're going to fill in all of our nail holes from our brad nailer. And again, I used 1-inch 18-gauge nails to nail everything up. And the purpose of the brad nails, as I've spoke about in other videos, is not integrity as much as it is just an extra clamp to use. As you can see, I've got a lot of stuff glued up right now. And all that's doing is just sucking down the material to the surface, makes it nice and tight, and lets the glue set up. It's just extra clamps, extra hold for the glue to dry up and glue it properly. That's why we use glue. Opposed to use nails alone, especially with this type of wood, pine is very finicky. You know, we're going to have slight movements. It's going to want to like twist and turn. If we keep it set and glued down, it's not going to want to do that. So that being said, I'm going to get my wood filler out. It's a Minwax product, which I actually really like. Stainable product, so whatever color this ends up being, that putty is going to go ahead and dry and take the stain very nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. There's many techniques out there on how to go ahead and fill your nail holes and repair any wood that might be damaged if you're using the putty for that as well. I am from the philosophy of using a putty knife, and I like to have different sizes of putty knives, but in order to get enough wood putty in the hole so it doesn't shrink up and show up later, and also get a nice flat surface where I'm not over sanding any of the material. I like to use a putty knife. Sometimes I'll push a little bit in there with my thumb or my finger, but to get it nice and flat and get the right amount on there for the application, I use a putty knife. So I'm sure there's plenty of debates. Tell me what you think in the comments below about what you do, or if you've got questions on that. I'm gonna get started because I gotta let this thing set up and then sand it so I can get these doors up to the Nook. All right, so there's the Minwax product I use for wood filler, and we're gonna go ahead and apply that, like I said, with the putty knife, filling in all our holes, letting this stuff set up and dry so we can come back, sand it, and then get our finish on these doors and get them hung. Make sure you're liberal enough with the wood filler that you get all the holes covered so they don't shrink, but also make sure that you're not applying too much, that you're working really hard at the end to sand it all out. Okay, I have the rail doors at the Nook. They are here, they're set up. I can finish the rest of the rail door project, and this is the reason why I brought the rail doors up here. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I had a bunch of scrap material that I wanted to use on the face of these doors, if possible. I went through about 6 different scenarios using some of that scrap material. I didn't really like any of them. I wasn't married to any of them. Nothing was really like shaking me up, making me want to dance about it. But I did find some other scrap material that I can use up here. And I've got some leftover 3/4 hemlock, which we were using for a lot of the casing for the windows and doors. And I've got enough, if I run them horizontally on the door, going this way, you guys will see this in a second, it actually looks really cool, and it matches our glass rail doors that we have for the 3 openings to the back container, which is the bathroom and the 2 bedrooms. If you keep watching, follow along the playlist, you're going to see those rail doors as well, and you're going to see how everything lines up at the end once this thing is finally done. So I'm going to use the hemlock. I actually like this look. It's a little bit more modern. It's going to match these other rail doors, like I said, a little bit better, and a little bit less time consuming. Less waste for sure, because I'm using the waste already, and I think it's just going to be overall a better feel for these giant doors. So that's what I'm going to run with. I've got them spaced out according to my magical math, and I'm going to go ahead and just lay these on here. I'm just using a pin nailer and glue to set these on. That's all I'm going to need. Like I said, this is 3/4. I'm going into the 1/2-inch ply, and everything's sucking up nice and tight. Again, Type Bond Ultimate 3 is the stuff to use for this type of woodworking. Trust me. Trust me. So I'm going to go ahead and lay these out. You guys can watch me install this, and then do one door, flip it over, finish the other door. And then it's down to more sanding, filling nail holes, and we're going to stain and seal this thing, and they're going to look fantastic. So let's get going. Okay, so once I cut those intermediate rails to length, I went ahead and picked my layout, divided that sucker into thirds because I'm going to have 3 of these intermediate rails, and then I went ahead and marked those points and glued everything up and used my pin nailer with 1-inch pin nails to set those intermediate rails, as you can see here. Again, gluing everything up is the important piece to this puzzle. Okay, once both sides of the door receive the intermediate hemlock rails, it's time to sand everything down and get it ready to finish it. So I started with 180 grit. I sanded all that in there, and as you can see here, I came back with my mineral spirits, and mineral spirits actually help clean up all the residue, the dust that's created from sanding, and not just wiping it down is not enough. All right, now we get to make pretty colors on these doors. I am going with a Danish oil because these doors are going to see a lot of use, and they also are going to be bookending the bathroom, one on each side. You guys will see all that if you follow along with the rest of the playlist on the Nook. You can catch that here. So I'm going to go with, like I said, Danish oil. I'm going to go with a dark walnut, and that's going to pull in some of the black that we have going on in here with the corrugated metal and some other things as well. So I think it's going to look really, really nice. It's not going to be as dark as it says dark walnut, but it's going to pull in the woods that I use on the door, and I think it's going to really kind of tie in well with this black corrugation in the metal and some of the other things we got, and including the other rail doors that we have, which are also black in their glass.
Danish oil is really good at penetrating wood. It's also really good at protecting wood. And like I said, these are going to get high-end use and they're bookending a bathroom. So apply it just like any other stain. You can wipe it on. You can brush it on with foam brushes. And I'm actually going to do a combination of the brushes and a foam roller just to speed up the process a bit. And then the same thing, put it on, wipe it off, let it dry. I can do a second coat in about 25-30 minutes, but it's usually penetrated dry and set up in about 8 to 10 hours. So ready for use, so to speak. I'm going to get started, a little shaking and baking.
All right, after 2 coats of Danish oil, it's on to the polyurethane. I used a clear semi-gloss polyurethane to match all of the trim and casing, as you can see here, and get it sealed up.
Okay, unfortunately, I did not get any video on us doing the install for this rail system, but I will go ahead and leave a link in the description below for the JuBest, I think it's JuBest, rail system that we found. This is what was going to work for us best for this size of door and opening for what we were trying to accomplish on this build. It is a hidden track system, meaning you don't actually see the rails and the traditional wheels that sit on top of that bar, that rail that you would see on a barn door or a rail door. These are actually a little more modern look, and it's actually a hidden system that allowed us to be able to put the track lower on the actual top of the door opening than normal. And that was just because of the stipulations and the specifics that we were using for this type of door. As you guys saw, they are large rail doors. Those are pretty big ones you can see a big opening, but it's a really cool system. I've never actually used this actual company before, and again, I'll leave that link in the description below. But you can see here, you don't see any wheels, rails, or anything like that. It's just a cover here, and the actual wheels actually get mounted on top of the door, and then they sit up inside this track. And it's got a floor guide just like everything else. And then you can see here, it just slides along that top track. It's a really cool look, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It's just basically the same sort of install you would do with any other rail. You sit that on there, that rail first, you screw in. Again, when we did our framing, we actually ran a header all the way across this thing ahead of time. So we didn't have to actually put any ledger in here to catch structural framing on the install. And if you're able to do that, most people are not able to do that, but if you're able to do that, either you're taking drywall out to put a header in, or you're framing something as this is a new construction, you want to go ahead and put that header in ahead of time so you can go ahead and just set that rail on at the end, especially for what we have here with a pre-finished birch plywood wall. We wanted to make sure we just could catch wherever we could for framing. So that's it for the rail doors, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. Thumbs up if you did, appreciate that. And again, if you guys, it's the first time to the channel, hit that subscribe button if you don't mind, and catch all of the other videos that I'm putting out on all kinds of things that we build. Homes, construction, we even talk about real estate here. So check us all out. BuiltByBaileys.com for all the merch. All right, guys, there you go. Check out the playlist of the Nook, and until next time, as always, guys, keep building.